Shalom and welcome again to another edition of Seekers of Meaning, the podcast TV arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. I'm your host, Rabbi Address. And if you'd like to contact us here at Jewish Sacred Aging and for the podcast, just feel free to email me, Rabbi Address at jewishsacredaging.com. And we invite you to check out the website, jewishsacredaging.com, and the Jewish Sacred Aging Facebook page. And we welcome your comments and suggestions for the podcast, for the website. If you'd like to write for the website, please let us know. And if you're interested in becoming a sponsor of a series of these podcasts, also just drop me an email at that address, Rabbi Address at jewishsacredaging.com, and we'll pick it up from there. Very, very, very easy. And this is a reminder that these podcasts are brought to you by AdvoCare. AdvoCare, elders here, family there, rest assured with AdvoCare. AdvoCare is a one-stop, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, healthcare support agency that handles people and your concerns and family members from Palm Beach County all the way down to Miami-Dade in South Florida. It's really, really important. Some of you probably have gotten that phone call at 10, 11 o'clock at night, or God forbid, in the middle of the night, that a relative, mom, a dad, a sister, or a brother has had some difficulties and they're living in South Florida and you're living thousands of miles away. And there's no need to really stress with AdvoCare. The AdvoCare nurse care manager has everything covered. He or she is on their way to your mom or relative's house, will professionally assess the situation. Your nurse care manager is familiar with all the medical issues that are concerned in a medication regimen. They'll try to evade a hospital emergency room visit by calling the doctor, and if necessary, will accompany your relative, your mom, your dad, etc., to the hospital. And you'll always know what is going on, and it can assist in making those very, very critical medical decisions. AdvoCare Management is a full-service care advocacy and life care planning organization which serves all of South Florida. We know the best medical providers and the best medical centers of excellence to handle your family-specific issues. You can set up plans to keep your parents at home safely for longer and assist in the transitioning to a senior living community if necessary. AdvoCare can manage all details and alleviate your stress because you live far away from your loved ones. It's a very, very important service. So many of us here and living and watching and listening perhaps have this situation, and there's a concern living so far away. If you want to contact AdvoCare, ask for my friend Amy Siegel. Their website is caremanage.com. That's www.caremanage.com. And their phone number is area 561-266-3489. That's area 561-266-3489. And a reminder, when you get to them, just if you can, just mention that you heard about them on Seekers of Meaning. Well, we have a very special guest, something very exciting to talk about, and we welcome Baruch Haba, Hanan Harchol, a New York-based teacher, filmmaker, animator, artist, classical guitarist, and high school teacher in New York City. And you teach filmmaking, right?
Filmmaking. It's a film production class in a public high school that is a CTE, Career and Technical Education School, where kids can learn professionally a trade in the arts in addition to the academics. So they study filmmaking for 3 years, and they learn everything from editing, production, filmmaking. Yeah.
So you're teaching future Steven Spielbergs.
Exactly. Yes.
That's cool. That's really cool. Hanan is in New York, raised in Israel, correct? In kibbutz?
So I was born in Kibbutz Kinneret. I moved to New Jersey at the age of 2. So, I was speaking a little bit of Hebrew, but then I switched to English. My mother continued speaking Hebrew to me. My father wanted to switch entirely to English, but I was basically in the United States from the age of 2. But my parents are both Israeli and very, very much affected by my Israeli heritage.
Well, that's good. And we were talking before we went on the air about you spent some formative years up the road from us in South Jersey, Princeton area. So you speak New Jerseyan, which is even better. Which is even better. One of the most exciting things, the reason why we invited Hanan to today's Seekers of Meaning, is the use of film to talk about some very, very, very challenging and emotionally issues. And you use the concept of animation. Yep. And you've done your own film. You told us you produced your own film about a teacher, which is about your first couple of years as a teacher. But tell me about animation. First of all, what led you to understand that animation is perhaps maybe even better medium than a classic film?
Yeah, so it's an excellent question. I started out studying art, and I went to college for art, for painting and drawing. And I was an abstract expressionist painter until in my senior year.
Wow.
One of the most important people in my life, Professor Judith K. Brodsky, showed me in my senior year that the abstract expressionist paintings that I was making were really not resonating emotionally, but that the paintings that were really connecting with people were drawings and paintings that I just made on the side of my father and me. And, my question to Professor Brodsky, Judith Brodsky, was, who's interested in my father? And her answer is, don't worry about that. Everyone has a father. And there was kind of the seed planted that within the microcosm of the family, of the personal relationship, is actually the universal relationship. Even if it's my particular relationship with my father, it resonates universally on a human level. So I'd been making paintings and animations of my father and me, my mother and me, and, conversations, almost kind of Talmudic-like arguments, but it really did not have any kind of religious content until I worked with the Covenant Foundation. And it's really the Covenant Foundation that started this whole journey of these animations, the one that you're going to see and the entire animated series, Jewish Food for Thought. It all began with the Covenant Foundation, with Harleen Appelman and Joni Blinderman from the Covenant Foundation, who recognized that the work that I was doing really had the potential of being a phenomenal way to convey Jewish education in a way that was very accessible and engaging.
So you've done a series of these animations on particular Jewish themes. You have a little bit of a series around values associated with high holidays, I think forgiveness, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they're like 1 or 2 minutes? How long are those, the high holiday ones?
Yeah, so the animations on average are 8 to 10 minutes. Some are a little bit longer, some are a little bit shorter. The reason they're so long is because, the process is I did not have any kind of background in Jewish education. I knew that I was Jewish, but it was not connected to anything. But then when I started working with a project with Rabbi Leon Morris, who now runs Pardes.
I know Leon. I watched him grow up here in Pennsylvania. Yeah.
So it's a very small world. And Leon was running a project that was funded by the Covenant Foundation, in which we were making a Passover Haggadah, in which each artist would take one of the 14 segments of the Haggadah and made a 3-minute film connected to it. The big concern was, okay, my characters are Jewish, the accents are Jewish, Israeli, but there's no Jewish content. Well, they said, no, part of the project is that we meet once a month and do Jewish text study. And it was in that Jewish text study with Rabbi Leon Morris that I started realizing that within the Jewish texts was, again, this wisdom that applied universally. It really, was something that was very relevant for me. And for me, it began this conversation. How can I take the wisdom in the texts and take it out of the text and make it accessible for people like me, who I considered kind of like a bagels and lox Jew? I knew I was Jewish. I like Seinfeld. I like bagels and lox. Maybe I go to synagogue maybe once a year just to hedge my bets, but it wasn't connected to anything more than culturally. But here was this amazing wisdom in the texts. So how do I take it out of the texts? the resulting animations meant that I would have to go to many, many rabbis and read many, many different texts from Tanakh, from Talmud. One area of Talmud that I focused on a lot was Pirkei Avot, but also just many, many different texts, modern texts, ancient texts, and I would amass all of these teachings and then figure out how can I take all of these teachings and put them together succinctly in a way that doesn't sound preachy and just as a conversation between a father and a son that would be helpful. And, to my surprise, the animations have been embraced by ultra-Orthodox communities. Kikar HaShabbat in Israel, which is a Haredi community, has featured my animations. And the URJ, the Union from Reform Judaism, has featured many of my animations, as has Aish. So it's become almost post-denominational, where, the wisdom that I'm choosing is the one that, for me, it doesn't matter about the denomination. It matters about, does it hit you in the kishkas? Does it really move you in a way that sticks with you? And the process of learning and studying with my rabbis and teachers has just been incredible. And then passing it on through the animations and having people, send me feedback, assuming that I came up with this wisdom. All I can say is, I'm just the vehicle. I'm passing it on, but it belongs to all of us. It's thousands of years of teachings on the human condition.
Why do you think animation resonates more than if we just shared a screen of a piece of Talmud?
Right.
Is it because it's hits a variety of different senses? Because it triggers when we were kids and it was like a cartoon. Why do you think animation just reaches people in a different way?
So the animation allows for two things. Number one, an animation is much more disarming than a live video. You see a cartoon and you're already ready to either laugh or not take it, quote unquote, seriously. So by being disarmed, it allows you to connect because you're letting your vulnerability and your armor down. You don't have your guard up. So you're connecting with this harmless, meaningless, quote unquote, cartoon. So that's one thing. It allows me to connect with people better. Number two, the animations allow me to draw the facial expressions of my father. They're very, very particular. My father passed away in 2012, but his expressions are seared in my memory. And so when I would try to impersonate my father on video, it wouldn't work because I wasn't his age. Now I'm getting closer and closer to his age, but so animations allow me to play me, a younger version of me, and also draw the facial expressions and mannerisms of my father. And then there's a third really important thing. The animations allow me to create a dialogue. And this is something very, very at the center, at the heart of Jewish teaching, is this conversation. One of the great things about the Talmud is, as opposed to maybe Shulchan Aruch, which might have, specific laws and this is the way it is. Talmud is about this conversation. In one part of the Talmud, you'll interpret one thing, and another part you'll interpret another thing. It's really the rabbis just arguing back and forth. And it's within that conversation, within that argument, within that dialogue, that you get a much, much deeper connection and understanding of the material. So this animated conversation, I can get the facial expressions, I can get the mannerisms, I get the conversation back and forth, and it allows people to be disarmed through the cartoon. So you really hit the nail on the head in terms of asking about why animation. That really is at the heart of it.
No, I'm still back with the fact that it's a gift to be able to channel your father and draw your father. So the one that we're going to feature here in a couple of minutes is about grief and loss.
Yeah.
Why that?
So I'm going to give a slightly roundabout answer. Yeah. So my father was a nuclear physicist. He looks like the character in the animations. He sounds like the character in the animations, but he wasn't really that person. The father that I feature in the animations is this, wise Talmudic kind of rabbinic teacher. My father's reaction to all of this is, this is all nonsense. He would say, this is all shtuyot. I was born in a kibbutz that was not only not religiously observant, but almost anti-religious. The irony is that on both my parents' sides, their parents grew up in very, very religiously observant homes. And my father's father, before he came to Kibbutz Kinneret in 1919 as one of the pioneers, at age 20 in 1919, before that, he almost became a rabbi in Vilna. He was, very scholarly. And I believe that those teachings got passed on. So while my father didn't take the religion seriously, he passed on a lot of the values. So what happens is I immediately connected with the values. Why is it that the one time a year that I went on Yom Kippur, they were talking about, forgiveness and repentance. And that sounds so preachy and it sounded so judgmental. Well, when I actually started studying it, the teachings behind it are extremely wise. And the teachings that I found almost always were completely paradoxical and opposite what I thought they were. Can I give a couple of examples of this? And this leads then to the mourning and loss. For example, forgiveness. You're commanded you to forgive. And it's the hardest thing to do, but you must forgive. If the person apologizes, you must forgive. But to me, why forgive? They never talked really, at least in synagogue, the ones I went to, why forgive? But then when I'm studying it, I found out from Rabbi Abraham Twersky that by not forgiving, you're hanging on to anger. You're letting somebody live rent free inside of your head. I never thought about that. I never realized that by not forgiving, there's also personal cost and many, many other teachings that I wasn't connected to. So what I like to do is I like to think about a topic that really challenges me, like humility. When I think of Judaism and humility, my son, the doctor, do you know how many Jewish people have won Nobel Prizes? It didn't come across to me as humility. But when I find out that Moses is described in the Torah as exceedingly humble, the most humble man to walk the face of the earth, I'm like, wait a second, what does Judaism really have to teach about humility? And again, I encourage all the listeners to watch the animations because the teachings in there are so, so profound. I'm always very, very surprised by what I learn, and it's transformed me as a human being. And again, I cannot thank the Covenant Foundation enough for allowing me to go on this journey and make these animations and share it with people. Regarding the topic of mourning and loss, I avoided mourning and loss because I felt that it was a very dark and heavy topic, and who wants to watch something so sad? But I went to Israel the previous summer to study awe, irah. And it happened to be right around Tisha B'Av. And there was this real sense of, and it was right after COVID, there was a real sense of kind of sadness in Jerusalem. And I said, wait a second, maybe I shouldn't be making an animation about awe. Maybe I should be making it about mourning and loss. But what do I know about mourning and loss besides the process that I went through losing my father, which was a very profound process? You go sit Shiva, you bring a kugel. Well, what is it actually about? And, what's the function of this process? What's the function of Shloshim? What's the function of saying Kaddish? What's this function about all of these Jewish, methodologies of taking you through this process? How do you move on after something as senseless and difficult as loss? Again, very challenging topic. Did a lot of reading, met with a lot of people, and then tried to figure out how to take some of the most profound teachings that moved me and put them in this animated conversation. But to be honest, Rabbi Address, this was one of the more challenging topics because there are no quote unquote answers. There's not just one way to look at this, because everybody goes through their own journey with it. So I really tried to leave this also open-ended.
You're right. And you could read all the books you want, but everybody mourns and deals with loss in their own way. And there is no right or wrong. That's one of the great, whatever. Okay. So we're going to give you a chance to actually see what Hanan was talking about. And here is his animated feature. It begins with Kugel, which is not an unusual question about, we're going to Shiva, why do we need to bring the Kugel? So here we go, and we'll be right back after this brief animated short.
I don't get it, Daddy. Shoshana's mom dies, and we give her a kugel? Shouldn't I say something to her? Whatever you do, Hanan, let her speak first. That's very important. And the kugel? Food is the last thing she should have to worry about over the next 7 days. Not to get technical, but wouldn't it have been easier to just have it delivered? No. It's important that we bring the kugel and sit with her. It's just so sad. I just want to be able to say something to make it better for her. We all lose, Hanan. It's part of life. Yeah, but we don't all lose in the same way, Dad. That's why she speaks first. It's about her. We're just there to be with her, to support and console her. The last time I felt this way was when I visited the Holocaust Museum. This woman on the video, she must have been in her 90s. She told a story about how when she was a little girl in the concentration camp, she felt so lucky. Because for some reason, her mother was never hungry and always gave her her bread. I mean, what do you say to that? You don't say anything, Hanan. You listen. And just be present. But how do you ever repair that hole? If I were the woman in the video, I would feel so guilty. That's because you think you can control, Hanan. But that's the perspective of a child. You can control your actions, but you can't control whether you live or die, Hanan. But it's just so sad. It is sad. Extremely sad. But it's also so much more, Hanan. That mother in the concentration camp didn't ask her daughter. She simply loved her daughter so much and wanted to give her the gift of life. And now her daughter has memorialized her mother's kindness in the video that speaks so strongly to you. And now you shared her story with me. But you still haven't explained to me when we get there. If I don't say anything to Shoshana, how can I help her feel better? Let me tell you a story now. In the kibbutz, there was a woman named Tzafrira who lost her son tragically, brutally, in the Lebanon war. Tzafrira's life completely fell apart. Not even her husband Udi, who had been her best friend since they met when she was 16, not even Udi could console Tzafrira. And then slowly, even her relationship with Udi began to fall apart too. No one could understand Tzafrira's pain. Then, one day, Udi suggested to Tzafrira to go to a support group of mothers who lost their sons. It was there that Tzafrira met another mother who lost her son in the same war in a similarly brutal and tragic way. Tzafrira could see the same empty hole, the same pain in that mother's eyes. A pain that did not need to happen. A pain that did not make sense. A pain that would never go away. And in that mother's eyes, Tzafrira found consolation. That mother's name was Fatima. The most important thing, Hanan, is for Shoshana not to feel alone. We need her to feel that her loss is shared by all of us. And then, the hope is that as she mourns and reflects and returns to the place, the hope is that from the place, she can gain a new perspective, grow a new horizon that incorporates the memory of her loved one. What place? The place where we can be ourselves without pretending. The place where we can connect with and be embraced by something larger than ourselves. Why do we experience loss, Daddy? It's a very good question, Hanan. And I don't know if I have a good answer. But I can tell you that in the Bible, Job asked God why. And God's answer was, "Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? When the morning stars sang together, and all the angels shouted for joy." What does that mean, Daddy? I'm not sure, Hanan. You'll have to ask God.
So, Hanan, suppose somebody wants to get in touch with you, perhaps to pick your brain or bring you to a group, a congregation, an organization. How do they do that?
So the easiest way is to contact me through my website. There's a contact us button. And my website is my first and last name.com. HananHarchol.com. 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 And click contact us, and that contact us goes directly to me. On there, you can also watch all of the animations for free. And they're meant to be for free. The Covenant Foundation, as I mentioned, funds my work, and people use the animations. You can actually take the animations there in at YouTube. If you type in Jewish and forgiveness in YouTube, it's one of the first things that comes up. Jewish and gratitude, etc. Any of the midot, the traits, and you can embed the animations in your website. Many places have done that. You can share them. You can use them in slichot services. And of course, I'd be happy to join your community via Zoom or coming in person as well.
Speaking of Jewish education, and we talk about it a lot, and there's this, we just had Rabbi Roselle on last month, talking about some of the significant shifts or lack thereof in Jewish education. The use of media and multimedia. So you're an artist, you're a painter, you're an animator, you teach, you make films.
Yeah.
How do you see this, this menu of media? How would you like to see it evolve now in Jewish education? My sense is we're not really using it enough. There may not be enough trained people, but if you could rewrite everything, and if somebody said, here's a synagogue, redo their religious their education program from kids to adults.
Yes.
What would you do?
So it goes to my philosophy of teaching. And as you mentioned, I made a feature film called About a Teacher about my first 3 years teaching at a public high school. The film is on Amazon, and I've been teaching now for 13 years. And one of the things that I learned as a teacher is that when the student is not doing what you want them to do, it's very easy for teachers to say, well, look, you can bring a horse to the water, but you can't make them drink. And to say, well, the kids are not motivated. But if the kids are not motivated, the question is, what is the teacher doing to change, to engage the kids in a way that motivates them? So I think one of the problems is it's not a problem with the content, with the wisdom. It's a challenge in the fact that we're used to being engaged in a certain way. everybody loves stories, but people will not necessarily have the patience or discipline to read through ancient texts and decipher the stories and read long analyses about them. So I think it's the job to, first of all, mine the texts and find the stories in there, because, we teach through stories,
Right.
and find a way to convey those stories in an engaging way. But I have now an even bigger tip, because several times now I've gone to Hebrew Union College and I've worked with groups of educators where we go through this exercise. And I ask them each to bring in, a short passage of text that is very moving to them. And then I put them in groups like I do in my classroom. And they decide which piece of text they think is the most accessible and moving and engaging. And then they have to come up with a dialogue, with a script. Imagine two people are sitting on a park bench and they're just having a conversation. What kind of a conversation would encapsulate the teaching that's in this text? And I have them do exactly what I do in my animations. They bring the piece of text to life through a conversation between two people. And then I even show them iMovie and how to take some free icons and create a short little film in which two characters are having a conversation oriented around a text. And again, this is something that I or any other artist can teach. It doesn't have to be an animated conversation. It can also be a painting. Can you come up with a picture that within that picture is encapsulated, the essence or the feeling, or take a photograph that, you feel conveys the feeling that you had when this, and connecting those creative projects where people are doing and making something and actually engaged in the creative process, where they become authors, but the ingredients that you give them, the color palette that you give them, is this wealth of infinitely wise texts and teachings.
As you're saying that, the thing that flashed in my mind is the blessing for the study of Torah.
Yeah.
And with the last part of which is la'asok b'divrei Torah. And my best friend, Rabbi Jakoski of blessed memory, when we would be sitting around after a staff meeting when we worked for the URJ, and he taught this a lot, because he said, let the text speak to you. Don't assume, just let the text, and that image of two people sitting on a park bench and looking at a text and say, well, what does it say to you? And it's really wonderful the way you described it, because it's such an easy thing. Well, easy in the sense of you rely on I'm thinking about our older adult generation, the work we do with Jewish Sacred Aging, to bring that wealth of life experience to a text, which is what we do and we teach, and let people just say, yes, this reminds me of when I did this or when I did that. It is the power of text, isn't it? I mean, my sense that you've learned that the power of the sacred text is so unbelievably profound and just does speak to everybody.
It is. I learned this from Rabbi Leon Morris, who I mentioned, in the beginning, who now runs Pardes and was working on that project which is what introduced me to the Covenant Foundation. If you don't begin with the text, the text is the source. So it's kind of like anything that you're getting outside of that. When people are watching my animation, they're getting, very, very powerful teachings, but those are teachings that I interpreted through first reading the texts and analyzing the texts. So at some point in the journey, the texts, have to be involved, because it's kind of like the root. That's that kind of crucial ingredient. The problem is that a lot of the texts are very inaccessible, or they're buried in with some other texts that might, there are a lot of texts that I leave out. I'll read a lot of passages and I'll leave out 90%, but take the 10% that I really like. But there's nothing to substitute from the text. And the other thing that I wanted to say that's crucially important in terms of education, and this is something, again, that I learned as a public high school teacher. One administrator told me in a 45-minute lesson, if you're talking in the lesson longer than 5 minutes in the beginning, before the kids are doing something, you're talking too long. And I'm like, but how are they supposed to learn? Well, they learn from each other. So I give them a task to do, and the task is designed in a very particular way that I planned in a very particular way. And then in small groups, they're learning from each other. The kids learn much, much better from each other than they do from me. And then I can come to the group and infuse the conversation with a little bit more pieces or steps or little breadcrumbs. And then they take it and they build it. But by the kids having a conversation, by having the people who are learning engaging in an actual conversation, and even more than just this Zoom conversation, like an actual conversation with people face to face, there is something that happens, a synergy, where then all of a sudden the thing that they're discussing, it comes to life. It becomes infused with the humanity of each individual human being, and they're bringing to it. And they also then add their own authorship and their own investment. So that's what really brings it to life, as opposed to kind of just sitting passively and just ingesting things, which is what our culture has kind of turned into. We're looking at a screen at the intermission of one of my son's soccer games. I looked around at the parents, and it's intermission. And all the parents, every single one, they're just like this, and their head is down. And, if you came from space, you would say, what's happening in this society? Everyone's just looking down on the screen, scrolling. And they think that they're engaging, but they're not really engaging, because it's this chevruta, this study together in which we're really engaging and thinking and mining, turning the things around and analyzing them and dissecting them, and also contributing our own things and creating. That's where really the living and the learning and the growing really occurs. And again, I learned that as a public high school teacher.
Yeah, somebody tells me that your class is pretty cool.
Now it is. In my first 3 years, I was a disaster of a teacher, but now it is a cool class. Yes, it is.
Well, I kol hakavod to you, and I hope your students understand that they're being given a tremendous gift. So,
well, not to sound like Pirkei Avot, but my greatest teachers really are my students. I've grown so much as a human being. And I felt more humbled and more put in my place by my students than anybody else. So my students are really the ones who have shown me my flaws and forced me to grow. It's very, very challenging. If you really, every time that something doesn't go well in a classroom, if you say, it's not the students, it's you. And what can you change? It forces you. It's a very, very tshuva process where you go in and reflect on yourself and say, where did I miss the mark? Where did I not serve them in the way that I needed to? And it's very humbling, and I cannot thank my students enough. And they come back and visit me, and it's a very, very meaningful, rewarding job.
No, and we'll be right back with Hanan in a minute. But just before we leave, a reminder about Advocare, our sponsor for these Seekers of Meaning podcasts. Advocare Care Management is your link to assisting your family members in South Florida, and they've been doing this for several decades. Advocare assists with medical issues, physician and medical center selection, in home care, and even senior living options. They provide complete support to those clients wanting to stay in their own home for as long as they wish, or for as long as is possible. And your family is assigned a nurse care manager or a social work care manager, or both if that is needed. And Advocare is familiar with all their health and living needs and creates a plan to remain as stable as possible. They're with you and relieve a lot of that stress of being far away if something happens with a loved one in that Palm Beach County to Miami-Dade County area, which probably some of you know have relatives, parents, siblings, etc. down there. So instead of a crisis, let me urge you to call Advocare or contact them to investigate their care and health management services. You'll be glad you did, and it relieves a tremendous amount of stress. Again, their website is caremanage.com, and the number for Advocare in South Florida is 561. That's area code 561-266-3489. That's 266-3489, area 561. Tell them that you heard about it on the Seekers of Meaning podcast. You'll be very, very glad you did. It's worthwhile investigating. A crisis time is not the time to make those calls. Hanan Harchol, Toda Rabah. I wish you tremendous success and good luck. And again, real fast, somebody wants to get in touch with you, learn more about what you're doing, bring you to their congregation, etc. They greet you or get to you by
going to my website, which is my first and last name.com, Hanan Harchol, HANANHARCHOL.com, and click the contact us button, and it goes directly to me. I want to thank you, Rabbi Address, for bringing me in on this a marvelous show. I also want to thank the Covenant Foundation for funding my work, and to all of my amazing, amazing teachers who have taught me and have helped me produce these animations. They're all free on my website, and I hope to have the chance to connect with you and your audience again soon.
Oh, please. We look forward to that. And if you talk to Leon Morris, tell him that Richie Address says hello from the old days. He was president of my regional youth group. Way. I mean, we're talking like in a galaxy that will never appear again. So, but he's a good guy, really a bright light. And thank you. And Toda Rabah. To all of you, thank you again for joining us on today's edition of Seekers of Meaning podcast and TV show from Jewish Sacred Aging. And again, if you'd like to contact us, email me at rabiaddress@jewishsacredaging.com. If you'd like to write for the website, please email me. We'll try and set something up. We have people writing for us from all over the country. And if you're interested in sponsoring a series of these podcasts, again, just email me, rabiaddress@jewishsacredaging.com. If you'd like to make a tax-free donation, which we really appreciate to help further our work, go to the website and click on the donate button. Just follow the prompts. It's really, really, really easy. Seekers of Meaning is produced at the broadcast centers of Lubetkin Media Companies here in beautiful Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And a big shout out to our genius producer, Steve Lubetkin. Again, thank you very much for joining us. I'm your host, Rabbi Richard Address. We'll see you next time on the next Seekers of Meaning TV show and podcast. And in the meantime, everybody, just stay safe, stay healthy, be kind to one another. Toda Rabah. Shalom.